I'm Mark Clemens. I am a professor of biological sciences at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I'm also a focus area leader in our Center for Biomedical Engineering and Science. And with the Shock Society, I currently serve as the associate editor-in-chief of the journal. Yeah, so my first memory of shock, this would have been the third annual conference on shock at the Lake of the Ozarks. I was a new postdoc, just joining the group of Irshad Chowdhury and Arthur Bowie at Yale, having just moved from St. Louis. And I arrived the 1st of January and was immediately informed that there was a deadline for abstract submission at the end of January for a meeting that the group always went to. This was the Shock Society meeting. This gave me focus to get this project done fairly efficiently, completed it, submitted the abstract, and got ready to go off to the Lake of the Ozarks, the first time for me in spite of having grown up in St. Louis. And when I got there, I found a very different type of meeting than I had been accustomed to. My previous experience as a physiology graduate student was going to the FASEB meeting, now called Experimental Biology, where I was able to communicate with 20,000 of my most intimate colleagues. Or alternatively, we went to the American Physiological Society, which was the small meeting of only 5,000 people. So going to this small group, 250 or so people, all of whom knew each other, and it was almost like being part of the family. The mixture of basic scientists and clinicians was something that I had not experienced before, and was really exciting for me as a physiologist who was really interested in what now they call translation. I wanted to make a difference. And I in particular remember one experience standing at my poster, brand new postdoc, and this surgeon from Louisville at the time came over to talk with me, Don Fry, and in the inimitable Don Fry mannerism, looked at my poster, nodded his head a bit, said, "I've been trying to tell these knuckleheads this for years. I'm glad to see somebody finally presenting data to support it." And that was kind of how the Shock Society worked. You had very good discussions with people that you've heard about, you've read about, and now they're actually standing at your poster. The discussions could be, shall we say, robust sometimes, but always in a very friendly way, and even after very intense disagreements at the reception following the session, everybody's having a good time together. And as a new investigator, I really felt supported by the overall group. And so it was an experience of a very different type of way of doing scientific communications than what I had experienced before, and something that I found to be very, very valuable, and basically the way scientific communication should be. The most obvious thing is that Shock is the only organization that I know of that is about equally distributed between clinicians and basic scientists. I've gone to many basic science meetings, and you rarely see a clinician there. The focus is on very fundamental questions and theoretically, someday, these may make some difference in human health, but that's not the emphasis. And then I've gone to clinical meetings where, as a basic scientist, I was distinctly in the minority, and predominantly focused on clinical problems. In contrast with the Shock Society, even our fundamental structure of presidents and the structure of the council, we have an even number of basic scientists and clinicians who are on the council. And our presidency rotates. One year it's a clinician, another year it's a basic scientist. Although very much in the Shock Society tradition, sometimes it's difficult to figure out on which side the individual should reside. We have clinicians who really seem like basic scientists. We have basic scientists who are really knowledgeable about the fundamental clinical problems. And I think that in some ways the essence of this collaboration between basic scientists and clinicians was well articulated by my senior mentor, Arthur Bowie, when I was a postdoctoral fellow. I remember one evening we had a visiting guest, and our group was out at Morey's, the old traditional Yale club, and he was talking with our visitor about how he was able to put together such a productive and effective research group that was made up of Irshad Chowdhury, a biochemist who was the real leader of the group, but then so many surgical residents that came through, me as another physiologist. How was he able to really put together this team? And he said, well, it's based upon my definition of a surgeon. He said, a surgeon is a biologist who operates. And I think that really captures the zeitgeist of the Shock Society, that he said, we're all biologists. Some of us operate, some of us don't. Now, that was when we were dominated by surgeons. We now have intensivists, anesthesiologists. But the basic attitude in the Shock Society is that we all communicate on an equal plane. Some of us do clinical practice, some of us support it, but we all have the same goal. So that's the first main thing of why the Shock Society, this beautiful marriage of basic science and clinical application that makes translation feasible. It's never easy, but at least feasible. And again, the other thing is the commitment of the Shock Society to mentorship and supporting the careers of young faculty. When I was a postdoc, I was a little bit clueless as to how to progress in the system. I was really fortunate to have outstanding mentors in Irshad Chowdhury and Art Bowie. And then when I came to the meetings, there were so many of the other senior members of the Shock Society who really seemed to take an interest in me, who remembered who I was, remembered what work I was doing, and it was very, very supportive environment. It also helped that the Shock Society over the years has established a very good relationship with the NIH programs that fund shock research. And so this helps facilitate young investigators getting out on their own, and helps promote the advancement of their careers. So from the marriage of the clinical and basic science and the nurturing attitude that the society has for its young. Some scientific groups eat their young. The Shock Society supports them. So, yeah, my best accomplishment as president, it's a little bit complicated. So when I became president, I gave my presidential address at the International Shock Meeting in Cologne, which was absolutely wonderful, although it was unfortunate that more of our US colleagues couldn't be there. And just a few weeks after returning, we started a period of substantial turmoil in my department in Charlotte. And as a result, I wasn't able to accomplish all that I wanted to. But I think the best thing that I did was at least start something, even though I wasn't able to bring this completely to fruition, was to lay out the prospect of a group to really target enhancing diversity in the Shock Society. I'm the father of two daughters. One is currently a pediatric intensivist and a faculty member at Washington University. The other is in the middle of an MD Ph.D. program. My wife is a physiologist. I'm well aware of the more difficult time that women and other minorities have had in succeeding in science. And so I was very happy that after laying out this part on the agenda and working at it, but not really being able to completely achieve what I wanted to, that my successor, Dan Remick, really took the ball and ran with it. And I wish I could have taken credit for actually bringing the whole system to fruition, but at least I am happy that I was able to initiate this and pass it on to my successors to actually bring to fruition. And this is, again, I think one of the things that is unique about the Shock Society is that it's not always about one individual. Our council works together as a mostly coherent unit. We don't always agree with everything, but I think my experience over the past many years has indicated that the group pulls together toward a common goal and is very effectively able to move forward accordingly. And so looking at what has transpired over the course of the last 10 years with a much more visible role of women in our society, the Shock Society, as well as many initiatives for other minorities to be able to really raise themselves up to be leaders in the field, that I'm pleased with the small part that I was able to play in in at least initiating that. So my favorite memory as president, it would have to be the Cologne meeting where I was installed and gave my presidential address. The Shock Society is a truly international organization. We are the American Shock Society, but we have representation from all over the world. At the Cologne meeting, it was largely European and American, but with a significant representation from Japan, from South America. And to me, this is was an embodiment of what is really necessary for real progress, not only in shock research, but in most human endeavors, is that when we look at the collaborations that are existing, both in fundamental scientific collaborations, but also in addressing big problems. We've recently had a Wiggers conference to look at models of sepsis with a largely international group. Big issues that are so much better addressed by combining the perspectives of multiple cultures, of multiple countries, unifying to work on a single problem. These days, there are many who are trying to move away from unity amongst countries, amongst peoples. And the international meetings that we have, I think, are really important in emphasizing how much more we can accomplish when we all work together for common goals. And with the international travel, when I grew up, nobody that I knew ever traveled any further than the Missouri Ozarks. And once I started meeting people from other countries, working together with them closely, visiting the other cultures, my concept of the world fundamentally changed. And this is something that I think is essential for the world of shock research to really solve the big problems, is to be able to get together in these international fora, to be able to communicate face-to-face and establish working groups across cultures to be able to solve the problems of shock and sepsis.